officer rules, she would be entitled to be present if she wanted to be, correct?
I would imagine, but we had talked before. I think she's going to stay up for the rest of
Okay,
this.
all right. Just want to make sure that I wasn't ordering her to be out. If she
No.
No. Okay, but if you want her out, that's fine. Who is your next witness?
Your Honor, we call Detective Narduzzi.
Okay, Detective Narduzzi, good morning again.
Good morning to you, sir.
Would you like to raise your right hand for me, please? You promise swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do, sir.
Okay, please have a seat.
Thank you.
When you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Narduzzi, can you state your name and your rank with rank in the police department for the record, please?
Michael Narduzzi, Detective, Grosse Pointe Park Police.
How long have you been a police officer?
21 years.
And how long have you been a detective?
7.
Are all those 21 years with the Grosse Pointe Park Police Department?
No.
Okay. Where were you before Grosse Pointe Park?
Detroit Police Department.
How long were you with Detroit?
It's about 2 years.
What is your involvement with this matter?
I am the officer in charge of the case.
Okay. As the officer in charge, can you describe for the court some of your responsibilities?
My responsibilities are to investigate this case and to figure out who did it and find them.
Okay. Can you tell this court when you first became involved with this case?
I became aware of this case the 13th at about probably 7:30, 8 a.m.
Okay. What was
Of December.
What was the first thing you did as your involvement with this case?
First thing I did was come into the station and review all the reports that were written by the officers that were working at the time of the incident.
Okay. Did you ever interview the victim in this case?
Several times.
Aside from interviewing witnesses, was there anything else you did, any other evidence you obtained in this case?
Pictures, security video.
Where was this security video from?
Security video is from the Harvard Grill, well, a couple, the Bikes, Boards, and Blades, and the Harvard Grill.
And did you have a chance to review that security footage?
Yes.
Can you tell this court what you observed in that security footage?
Objection. That's hearsay. What do you observe? The video speaks for itself. You know, I mean, I don't think it's proper that you testify what a video showed. That's all.
Overruled. Go ahead.
Which video, sir?
You said you got one from the
Bikes, Boards, and Blades.
Bikes, Boards, and Blades. Where else?
The Harvard Grill.
Okay. Tell this court, where is Bikes, Boards, and Blades located?
It's right on the corner of Mack and Cadue on the southwest side.
Okay. And where were the cameras located, were the surveillance cameras of the video that you obtained from that place?
The surveillance video from that place, I believe it's camera number 7, and it's fixed inside the store facing the front door, which faces Cadue Road.
And would that be on, if you're going south on Cadue, would that be on the right side of Cadue?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell the court what you observed when you reviewed that surveillance video?
At approximately 12:04 a.m., I observed the victim come by. She walks right by there, just like she said she did, and her face is down, her head is down, and she's holding a phone in front of her hand, so as if she's texting. Her purse is draped over her right shoulder, and she appears to be perfectly fine. In addition to that, nobody followed her in or preceded her in past that camera.
Would that camera, can you tell us what city that camera would be pointing out toward to show?
Well, the camera is in Grosse Pointe Park. It faces the front door of Bikes, Boards, and Blades, which sits on Cadue Road. On the other side of Cadue is where Grosse Pointe City starts. So you actually see a little bit of the parking lot, the sidewalk, and Cadue Road, and then behind that is where Grosse Pointe City actually is.
Now, just clarification. You said it's pointing out the front door, so you actually mean the side door because it doesn't cross Cadue.
Well, the front door to the business faces Cadue.
All right. You don't think it faces Mac?
No.
When you see this person walking in front of the store, would that be in Grosse Pointe Park?
Yes.
Are there? You said there were other surveillance cameras you reviewed. Were there any surveillance cameras that you reviewed of the outside of the store, in the area of the store?
Yes, there was a Harvard Grill, and there was a neighbor right behind one house south of Bikes, Boards, and Blades, right behind the alley. There's an alley that separates the house, the first house, and the vice boards and blades.
At some point in time, when you received a statement from the victim, did she describe to you what her assailant was wearing?
Yes.
Okay, did you ever, did anyone fitting that description, did you ever notice someone like that in the surveillance videos?
Yes.
Can you tell the court where, in what surveillance video you noticed that?
Then the first video surveillance that we noticed him in was in Harvard Grill. He was at about 12:05 a.m., 12:06 a.m., a tall, thin black male crosses Mack Avenue, wearing a white hoodie with it up, walks southbound on crosses Mack southbound on Harvard, appears to bend the corner and go right up an alley, and he's wearing a white hoodie.
Okay. And where is this alley located?
It is located just east of Mack. It runs behind the businesses on Mack Avenue.
Is there, where you see him run, can you tell us what city that is in? Or where you see him go, excuse me. Can you tell us what city that is in?
Grosse Pointe Park.
Okay. Is there another time when you see that person in any surveillance video?
Yes, from that same restaurant, the Harvard Grill, you see the same suspect, the same subject, a tall, thin black male wearing a white hoodie with it up, come walking back in the exact same direction. I take that back, not walking, but running back, and he runs right across Mack Avenue. Then we went across the street to check out Bob Maxey Lincoln, and we have him on their video running across the street and then walking up Harvard.
Where you initially saw him running, can you tell us what city that area would have been in?
Grosse Pointe Park.
Okay. Now, as the officer in charge of this case, did you ever have a chance to interview any possible suspects in this case?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us how you came up with a suspect in this case?
We came up with a suspect in this case by working with DPD sex crimes. There was, in the weeks following the case, I was in contact with them in an attempt to develop any suspects, any similar crimes with similar MOs. And over the course of a couple of weeks, they had 3 more incidences that were very similar in nature, similar MO, there were cuttings, and similar description. So we all theorized that it was the same person who did this. In one of their incidences, they got a thumbprint off a window, and that thumbprint came back to Mr. Winfield.
Just for clarification, when you say DPD sex crimes, you're referring to the Detroit Police Department, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Who were you speaking with? Who were you working with with the Detroit Police Department? Detective
Bobby Kane.
Okay. After you had obtained a possible suspect, what did you do next?
They got the identification back from the thumbprint on Friday, I believe it was Friday, January 8th. By late in that day, he had been taken into custody.
But for clarification, when you say they had got a thumbprint, who are you referring to?
The Detroit Police Department.
Okay. And when you say they had taken him into custody, who are you referring to when you say him?
Mr. Winfield.
Okay. Did there come a point in time when you met with Mr. Winfield?
Yes. I interviewed Mr. Winfield the next day, January 9th, at the Detroit Detention Center, okay, at about 10:55, I believe.
When you first interviewed him that day, was he was locked up at the Detroit Detention Center?
Yes.
Do you know how long he had been locked up for?
It was probably 17, 18 hours, okay, approximately.
Tell us about this. When did you first come into contact with Mr. Winfield at the Detroit Detention Center?
I first came into contact with him in the Detroit Detention Center. It's the old Mound Road prison, so you have to go across the yard and pick him up from one building and bring him back to another building to actually do the interview. So I first encountered him, I'm not sure what building it was, but it was across the yard where he was being housed. And the officers brought him to me, and then I had to walk him across the yard and interview him in another building.
Okay, so you had met him in one building. Who walked through the yard with you guys?
Just us.
Just you and Mr. Winfield?
Correct.
Okay. What was Mr. Winfield wearing at that time?
He was wearing a white hoodie.
Okay. That person that you had met at the Detroit Detention Center, do you see him sitting in court today?
Yes.
Can you point to him and tell the court something he's wearing?
He's sitting right here at the table wearing the yellow Wayne County Jail outfit.
Your Honor, will the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant, Darian Winfield?
Good job.
After you walk through the yard with him, what do you do next?
I take him into room number 2, and I conduct an interrogation of him.
Okay. Can you tell the court, how is this room set up?
It's set up, there's only a small table, a couple feet long, with a chair on either side, and I think there's a couple chairs behind that, and it's a very small room. It's got like a metal wall, and it's a small room, very small, very stark, gray and white, I think.
In this room, it was just you and Mr. Winfield, is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you know, is this room equipped for recording at all?
Yes, it is.
Okay, can you tell the court what type of recording they have in this room?
They have an overhead camera and a side camera.
Is it both audio and visual recording?
Yes, it is audio and visual.
And did you make any confirmation that the audio and visual recording was working that day?
Yes, I asked one of the officers just prior to me getting Mr. Winfield, and she said it's always recording.
When you first sat down with Mr. Winfield, what did you initially talk to him about?
I gave him his Miranda rights.
Okay. Can you tell the court what rights you read to him?
I read to him the Miranda rights. He has the right to remain silent. Anything he says may be used against him. He has a right to an attorney. And those are his rights throughout the entire investigation.
Okay.
He has the right to remain silent.
Are these rights ever acknowledged by him in some fashion?
Yes, they are.
Can you tell this court how he acknowledges these rights?
He acknowledges them both verbally, and he signs and dates the constitutional rights form to acknowledging that he was so advised.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Detective, I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 1. Can you tell the court what this is?
This is the constitutional rights form that I advised Mr. Winfield of on January 9th.
Okay. Would you like to see it, Judge?
Did we...
I haven't admitted it yet, or I haven't asked for it to be admitted yet. Can you, at this time I would move for the admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 1.
No objection for purposes of exam.
Okay, thank you. For purposes of exam only, it's in there. Whose handwriting is on the form, yours or the defendant's?
Both of ours.
Okay, what about answering all the questions?
Answering all the questions is my writing. He initialed next to each right up top and then signed and dated the form just below that.
Very good. Your exhibit.
I'm going to leave this with you, Detective. Can you tell the court, there are, I believe, 5 paragraphs at the top. Can you tell the court what those paragraphs are?
The actual constitutional rights, his Miranda rights.
And those are the rights that you said you read to him, correct?
He actually read them out loud, and then I, in addition to that, read them to him.
All right, now there's some handwriting next to it. Can you tell the court what that handwriting is?
Those are his initials.
Okay, and when does he initial that?
Right after.
Right after?
Right after we go over it.
Okay. All right, now below those rights there is another line that says signature. Can you tell me whose signature appears on that line?
Mr. Winfield's.
And what is the date and time of that signature?
1/9/16, 10:55 a.m.
Okay. Now there's several questions after this. Did you read those following questions to the defendant?
Yes.
And whose handwriting would that be after those questions?
My handwriting.
So you had informed the defendant that, or you had confirmed with him that he understood those rights you had read them, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And at this time, had you made any, or to your knowledge, anyone else made any threats to Mr. Winfield?
No.
Did he acknowledge that no one had made any threats to him?
Yes.
Okay. What about any promises? Did you or anyone else make any promises to him at this time?
I did not, and to my knowledge, no one had.
Okay. Did he acknowledge that no one had made any promises to him? At this time, did you have, you carry a weapon in your capacity as a detective?
Yes.
Did you have your weapon on you at that time?
No.
Is it standard practice to not have a weapon in the DDC?
Yes.
Did you or anyone else to your knowledge use any force at this time against Mr. Winfield?
No.
Did he acknowledge that too?
Yes.
Did you ask him if Mr. Winfield was under the influence of any drugs or alcohol at this time?
I did.
And did he indicate to you that he was?
He said he was not.
After you went through these rights, did you conduct an interview of Mr. Winfield?
Yes, I did.
At the end of this interview, did you have the defendant do anything?
Yes.
And what did you have him do?
I had him write out a statement.
Did you write out that statement for him, or did he write it?
He wrote it.
May I approach the witness, Judge?
Before we get to the statement, do you have any voir dire on the rights being given or not?
Judge, for purposes of the preliminary examination, I'm willing to stipulate that everything is in order. If we're going to attack something, it will be at the circuit court level.
Okay, thank you, sir.
May I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Detective, I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 3. Can you take a look at that and tell this court what that is?
This is Darian Winfield's written statement.
And is this the statement that he wrote out after you conducted an interview with him?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I'd move for the admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 3.
For purposes of exam, no objection.
Okay, so admitted.
At the bottom of that, of Exhibit 3, can you tell us, there's some signatures down there. Can you tell us whose signatures those are?
Those are Mr. Winfield's and myself's signature.
So you signed this document as well?
Yes.
And when is this document dated, if it is dated?
It's dated January 9th, 2016.
And were you present when the defendant wrote this statement out?
Yes.
Was the statement written out in this room at the DDC?
Yes.
Can you read what that statement says, please?
Yes. Yes, I, Darian Winfield, assaulted a woman with a silver butter knife with a serrated edge. I apologize for my actions and are going to take full responsibility. As I approached the woman, I asked to use her phone, and I could see that she was drunk. She let me see it, and I dialed the wrong number and gave it back to her. As I gave the woman her phone back, she gave me a kinda hatred, crazy look that I didn't like. I proceeded to follow her through an alley and took out the butter knife as I ran up on the lady, not thinking, and grabbed her. We tussled for a while, and she fell in the grass. And she said, "Why does this happen to me?" So I ran off while throwing the knife that I found on the ground. Incident occurred at Cadjo and Mac.
Just for clarification, Cadjo and Mac is the area in which you obtained surveillance video. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, you stated earlier that this room was equipped with audio and visual recording devices. Is that correct?
That is correct.
After this interview, were you able to obtain a recording of the interview?
I was.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 2. Can you tell the court what that is?
This is the CD containing my interrogation of Mr. Winfield on January 9th.
And that is a copy of that recording.
This is one of the originals.
And you know that you're recording how, Detective Winfield?
This is the recording because I watched it. It was handed to me directly.
Is there some notation on there and you're writing? How do we know that's the right disc?
Sergeant Ward gave me this disc from Detroit Sex Crimes. He's the one who downloaded it for me and provided me with it.
Yeah, whose writing's on there?
That's Sergeant Ward's.
Okay. All right.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move for the admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 2.
As a physical object itself.
That's correct.
Sir.
For purposes of examination, no objection.
All right, so admit it. You don't plan to play it, or you do?
You know, I don't plan to play it, Judge. I think the written statement is good enough, but if the court would like to, I would just have it admitted so that, for your edification, you could watch it. Can I have just a second, Judge?
Certainly, ma'am.
Based on your investigation in this case, were you ever able to go to a location where this incident occurred?
Yes.
Were you able to determine what city this incident occurred in?
Yes.
What city is that?
Grosse Pointe Park.
I have nothing further, Judge.
Okay. Mr. Kellerman.
Thank you. On the morning of January 9th, I believe it is, you, in fact, sit down with Mr. Winfield at the Detroit Detention Center, correct?
Correct.
And you give him his rights, and then you explain to him, do you not, that when people admit their mistakes, the whole system tends to go easier on them, correct?
I said something along those lines, yes.
Sure. And, because is that true? I mean, to the best of your knowledge?
My knowledge, yes. To the best of my ability, my experience, that when people admit their mistakes and they own up to their responsibilities, people tend to go easier on them.
All right,
so just in general.
You didn't lie to them when you said that, then?
Nope.
And at any point in time, do you know of any lies that you may have told them during your interrogation?
No.
And is that just because of the nature of this case, or do you make it a general practice not to lie during interrogations?
Probably because of the nature of this case.
Yeah. Because lying during an interrogation is okay, isn't it?
According to the Supreme Court, yes.
Now, it was within just several minutes of you sitting down with him that he admitted that he cut the lady, correct?
It was probably 15 minutes in, 15, 20.
And what he told you was he cut her because of the way she looked at him, right?
Correct.
In fact, he really couldn't describe to you the cutting, could he?
He described it.
How did he describe it?
He said I ran up and I cut her, and he explained how he's holding the knife, and
he told you that he ran at her from an angle, right?
He said he grabbed her by her left shoulder, forced her to the ground, cut her, and ran off.
How many times did he say he cut her?
Many.
You sure of that?
Yes. Several to many. I don't know the exact number.
Now, there were times when he talked about it that he told you that he didn't intend to cut her, correct?
I don't recall if he said I specifically didn't intend to cut her. He said he didn't intend to rob her, and he said he didn't intend to sexually assault her. He said he intended to scare her.
That's right. He intended to scare her. That's all he said.
He said he cut her and he wanted to scare her. Correct.
All right. And he approaches a woman with a serrated edge, right? That's what he told you.
Yes.
And he apologized for his actions, right?
Yes.
He takes full responsibility, right?
Yes.
He saw that she was drunk, correct?
Yes.
And after he gives the phone back, he followed her through an alley, correct?
That's what he said. She didn't go through the alley. I mean, he said Dad followed her through an alley. He went through the alley.
And he grabs her, and then he says they tussled, correct?
Correct.
She fell in the grass and says, why does this happen to me, or some words to those effect, correct?
Correct.
So in his written statement, he never admits that he actively stabbed her, did he?
Well, I guess he never says actually I cut her in his written statement. That's true.
I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, any follow-up?
Detective Narduzzi, did you gather any evidence from the defendant at the time of this interview?
Yes.
What did you gather?
His white hoodie that he was wearing at the time of at the time of his arrest, but he admitted that that is the white hoodie he wore during the incident.
I'm going to object to this line of questioning. It goes beyond the scope of cross.
Response?
Your Honor, I don't think it goes beyond the scope. He asked him about whether the defendant ever admitted to stabbing this person, and I think my follow-up question, based on the evidence that he gathered during this interview, goes straight to whether the defendant did stab this woman or not.
I have to sustain the objection, I'm
I have nothing further.
Okay, thank you, Detective.
Thank you.
Anything else from people?
I have no further witnesses, Judge.
Anything from defense?
Nothing, Judge.
Okay. Court finds that the people have established their burden of proof, which is probable cause. It's a low standard. The people just have to show that they have some evidence that the charged crime was committed and that the defendant's the one that committed it. And the standard proof is actually not what was required for a traffic ticket to go out there. Charge being assault with intent to murder, 1400 block of Caju in Grosse Pointe Park. Defendant did make an assault on Sarah Kreitzler with intent to commit the crime of murder, contrary to state law. People have met their burden. Today is February 1st, 2016. Exam was held. The matter is bound over to Circuit Court for arraignment on the information. That will occur 1 week from today. On February 8th, 2016, at 9 o'clock a.m. in Joint Murphy Hall of Justice. Okay, anything else from the Court to address at this time? First from the people.
Nothing from the people, Judge.
How about from the defense?
I'm sorry, Judge.
I just wondered if you had anything for me to... I didn't mean to interrupt you. If you have anything for me to address at this time?
No, I do not.
Okay. All right. Court stands in recess.
Thank you, Your Honor.
David, C-A-M-E-N.
Oh, she